What's up, guys and gals? Welcome back to the Nerd Castle. Today in the world of indie games, we're going to be taking a look at a title called Tainted Grail, The Fall of Avalon. If you've never seen this game before, it's a game that's made by a tabletop board gaming company that seeks to rival titles like Skyrim. It's an open world RPG where you can basically say and do whatever you want, cruise around, fight monsters, take quests, do all that kind of fun stuff inside the post-apocalyptic ruins of a post-Arthurian Camelot. And so this is a world that has a lot of problems. King Arthur is gone. He's dead. The Knights of the Round Table are trying to fight back this thing called the Weirdness, which is a fog that comes in every single night and converts normal people into basically drooling, evil eldritch berserkers. And there's a lot of things befalling the kingdom right now. Lots of factions vying for power and attempting to set themselves up to fill the vacuum that Arthur left behind. The game is coming out in 1.0 on the day after, I think, this video goes live. So it's not quite out yet, but the embargo drops. I've put an ungodly amount of hours into this game over the course of the last 2 or 3 days. I think that's a really, really good sign. So today we're going to take a look at it. We're going to see if it's the kind of thing you wanted to add to your wish list. How does it stack up against other open world IPs and properties that are out there inside the gaming industry? I've done my best to kind of go through everything carefully, and I've been sort of approaching it comparing this game to like Morrowind, Oblivion, Skyrim, and I'm doing that on purpose because I think that's honestly going to be the first question that comes to mind is like with the Oblivion remaster being released and Skyrim having like a world of modding options, like is this game worth your money if you can just download a whole bunch of mods for other titles that exist out there in the gaming space? So buckle up. Today we're going to talk about Tainted Grail Fall of Avalon. The link is down below in the description just in case you wanted to check the game out and get it for yourself. I've also got a bunch of other links down there that'll take you to various aspects of the Nerd Castle, things like Patreon or things like social media that you can maybe interact on top of. I'm not like a huge social media guy, never have been. I kind of sat down a while ago and was like, you know, I don't think that like social media has ever made my life better, and so I haven't been like super active on it lately, but I'm going to be making an attempt to be more active on it, and hopefully by the end of this little 30-minute jaunt, you guys will be able to decide whether or not this is a game you wanted to purchase for yourself or if it's not the right thing for you. So without further ado, let's dive on into it and see what we've got going on here. So as previously mentioned, Tainted Grail, The Fall of Avalon. It's an open world RPG, and to my eye as a guy that previews games with like a light reviewing touch, this is one of those games that I think was definitely made with a certain awe for Skyrim, I guess. You can tell very, very much in this game that the people that created it were definitely looking at Skyrim and other titles inside the gaming space in order to create sort of the blueprint for the title that they wanted to make. What makes this game especially interesting is that the company that made this game, they are not a game development company. I play a lot of board games in my free time. In fact, every single Saturday night I have a get-together with about 5 or 6 friends, and we play various board games. A lot of them things like fantasy games, a lot of them dungeon crawlers, a lot of them zombie games, eldritch games, anything and anything that you can imagine. And the company that made this game is a company called Awaken Realms. They've made a couple of my favorite games, things like Nemesis Lockdown or, you know, Nemesis Distress, which are really fantastic games. And in the board gaming world, when Awaken Realms releases something new, it's kind of like when Blizzard releases something new, or it's kind of like when Bethesda releases something new. Awaken Realms makes games that are very complex, they have very high-quality components, they have artwork that's like the best in the entire genre. They tend to be that sort of AAA board gaming company, and recently they've made a sprint into creating video games. Some of you might remember from probably 7 or 8 years ago, they released a board game that surrounded Tainted Grail that I personally actually think, and it started out as kind of like the game that they previously made for Tainted Grail sort of seemed to be implying that it was going to turn into a card-based open-world RPG, and then they just sort of pivoted into making it into sort of a Slay the Spire-like with ultra grimdark graphics. The game did pretty well. It was fairly popular on various gaming areas, and I think they used the money to reapply it to this title right here. And they did a pretty good job when you consider the fact that this is a company that does not have a ton of experience when it comes to making a video game, but loads of experience when it comes to making something like a board game. They did a really, really good job here. I found that this game is actually fairly customizable, and it's got some interesting twists on open world RPG systems that are worth addressing and actually talking about. One of them is the encumbrance system, which I actually like a lot by comparison to pretty much everything else out there in the gaming world. And so I've been really impressed by this game. I don't think you dump 20 hours into a game unless you're impressed with it, especially if you're as busy as I am. But right now, actually, I don't even know what I'm doing. Oh, I went in the wrong direction. That's what I did. The good news about that is that it did make for a really action-packed opening to the game, but right now I'm playing a battle mage. The general storyline of this title is that King Arthur is dead. Not only is he dead, but he's died like 7 or 8 different times, and using Merlin's power, they bring him back whenever there's some giant cataclysm or problem that befalls Camelot that needs to be fixed. This time around, our body has been inhabited by King Arthur, thus giving us access to all kinds of fantastical powers, and now there's another apocalypse on the horizon that's threatening to tear Camelot apart, and there's a ton of different characters, factions, and people you may recognize from Arthurian lore that are all trying to sort of suss out any form of success or any form of power from the way things have adapted with Arthur being gone. And so you will run into Galahad, you'll run into Caradox, you'll run into all those people inside this game. I'm currently playing a battle mage. That's the build that I decided to go with. As you can see, I'm aggressively flinging lightning everywhere. I didn't mean to dash forward right there. That was a mistake. The downside to me playing a battle mage is that both of my hands are occupied when I'm inside of combat. We'll talk about how equipment and everything else works inside. Oh my god, there's so many zombies around here. I was not expecting this volume of zombies. Let me see if I can bounce a lightning bolt off of some of these guys. If I charge up my spell and I do a heavy cast, it actually bounces in between them. There we go. And that should leave me with enough of an opening to get rid of that berserker right there. There are a lot more of them down inside of here, though, and they're all hiding behind shields, which is actually an issue that's going to be difficult to resolve. He's on fire, so he should die on his own. I've got a magically enchanted spell blade that I've got right now that I can't remember exactly where I got it from, in all honesty, but it's great. It makes all of my spells hit harder. It's also, like, normally when you play an open world RPG and you get an item that's specifically for spellcasters, it tends to kind of be like doo-doo in Melee, but not in this game. It's actually pretty good. I need to put up a bonfire real quick is what I think I need to do, because you see that yellow stuff that's everywhere? That right there is the weirdness. So whenever night falls in the current iteration of Camelot, this thing called the weirdness starts to creep in. It makes all the monsters tougher, it makes them harder to kill, but it also makes it so you get like this fun little loot box system where enemies drop unidentified items. They don't do that during the day, and so you can actually identify those. It's also the only way to get, I think they're called ethereal cobwebs, which are a crafting resource you use for a bunch of metagame functions. But I need to put down a campfire, and I need it to kind of be like daytime right now because this is a little bit of mayhem, and I think the extra level of difficulty is making me get smacked a little bit too hard. But back to my battle mage. After about 15 to 20 hours inside of the game, this is my current battle mage. I'm looking a little bit dingy as of right now. I haven't really found any options for gear outside of like my trinkets and my rings that make me happy. The game does have kind of like a console UI that you'll run into. I'm playing here on the PC platform for reference. But after you fiddle with it for a little while, there are some aspects of going through the UI that are going to be a little bit clunky, but nonetheless, it all functions. So let me grab my campfire real fast. I'll just put this right here on the ground. I've got a second to level up, and this is a good way for me to talk about character customization inside of this game. Because what could be more important than the way that you customize your character inside of an RPG? So there's 3 main avenues by which you're going to end up customizing your character. The game is a hybrid system, so for most intents and purposes, this game's level up system is very, very similar to Skyrim. You have skills, you use those skills, they level up. Those level ups to your skills like one-handed swords or those level ups to your skills like casting, they give you some kind of passive bonus, usually like an extra couple % worth of damage, or maybe you swing a little bit faster, so on and so forth. But every single time you level up, you're also going to get an attribute point. Attribute points are going to allow you to customize your character's attributes, as you might have guessed. I know, shocker, right? But this is actually fairly important because almost every single piece of equipment in the game has stat requirements in order for you to equip it. Now, you can equip anything in the game that you want all the way on through. So let's take, for example, if I go back to my campfire here and I open up my inventory, I've got this spell sword right here, an Arcanist sword +3. I need to have, actually, it doesn't have the stats listed right there. Do I have anything else on me? There we go. This guy will work. I guess once you fulfill the stats, it makes it disappear. But this Red Death sword, if we wanted to use the Red Death sword, we would need 11 strength and 4 dexterity. If you don't have that, it looks at the stats that you do have, and it basically just percents out the stats on the weapon, but any magical modifier that you have on that weapon, so with my Arcanist sword here, it increases my spell power by 10%. If you don't have the stats to go in, you can equip it, but you won't get access to the implicits and the cool enchantments that are going to be on that weapon. And so actually where you choose to place all of your various attributes are going to be very important as you go through the game. Luckily, level ups flow like water in this game. I routinely level up like multiple times per hour, and so usually it's not too hard to get points where I need them to go if I want my character to get access to an item that I've been eyeballing very, very carefully. All the stats here do different stuff. You can unfold them and see what they do. Everything from attack speed to the amount of mana you have to how good you are at crafting. This is actually one of the few games that I've ever seen that has a stat that's entirely here just for crafting. It's called practicality, and it makes you like really, really good at crafting because this game, actually, you're going to be crafting a lot inside of this title. Pretty much everybody's going to touch the crafting system in this game if they really want to get every ounce of juice out of their character. From there, after you spend your attribute points, you've got skill trees. So every single attribute has 3 or 4 trees that are associated with it. You're going to find everything in here from like unarmed fighting skills to bow skills to casting skills. If you want to be the kind of guy that just has like a wand in your hand and you shoot blasts at people, you can do that. Inside practicality, you can be better at healing yourself, trading, status effects, armor. Strength's obviously going to have all of the little trees that you want to have access to. For things like one-handed, dual-wielding, two-handed, fighting people with your fists, which appears, I found a number of pieces of equipment in this game that you can just punch guys in the face all the way through the game, I'm pretty sure. And then there's also generalized skill trees over here that just give you flat passive bonuses. For right now, I forget what I was working on. I think I was just going to add more damage to my spells. That's kind of what I feel like I want to do. I feel like my melee skill right now is way better than my spell casting, and that makes me a piss-poor battle mage. I think I'll probably go, each enemy affected by an elemental status increases the corresponding damage type by 10%. Yeah, that sounds good. I'll take that as well because I've decided to be a lightning mancer. But there are loads of spells and things that you can fling at the enemy in this game. Archery feels pretty good. There's throwing weapons, like throwing daggers, bombs, all that kind of stuff that you can play around with too. But let's just rest till the morning until we get the weirdness to go away, and then we'll keep diving down on into this ruin. I don't know how many more bad guys are going to be around here, but I feel like I've done a pretty good job beating them all to death. In all fairness, this entire video, Sir Renard? Who is Sir Renard? All right, well, let's fit him up with some lightning first and see how he feels about that. If I can get him... Ooh, he hurts. Okay, I don't like that. He's a little stingy. Put me back on my food real quick. There we go. I hit him pretty hard, though, too. Okay, I can live with that. Let's give him the lightning. He might try to pull a potion and drink it. Was this guy one of the named bandits that I was looking for out here? He is. Very nice. So there was actually a reason to come up here. Inside towns, you'll find storylines, you'll find intrigue, you'll find bounty boards. I have found that the world isn't quite as interesting or interconnected as a game like Oblivion or a game like Skyrim. So the world doesn't super change around your actions from what I've seen so far. The Duelist's Blade, huh? The Umbral Shroud. I've already got all the Camelot armor, so I probably won't even pick that up. But what did we get here? We got the Duelist's Blade. So that's like a natural melee weapon for somebody that's in bow builds right there. Because dexterity increases your bow damage, and I think perception increases your crit. 15% damage when facing one opponent. Oh, it's a literal Duelist Blade. So it only gets its bonuses when you're 1v1ing. Probably a good boss killer weapon then. What was up with his helmet? What was that thing right there? The Umbral Shroud. Your critical chance is up by 15%, but you lose 1 mana per second. Okay, critical chance being up at 15% is pretty raw. Does it look cool? I mean, it's got a strange sort of eldritch appeal to it. I'm gonna keep my super cool skull helmet though. I think it makes my mana come back faster. I haven't really been like updating my armor altogether that often because I haven't found anything that's like crazy useful for people that are a hybrid spec right now. Occasionally I stumble across one of them, but that has not been the case with this character. But as I was saying, the interconnectivity of this world and how alive it feels, it doesn't feel quite as alive as like Skyrim or Oblivion from what I've seen so far. So when you're inside of towns and you're interacting with people, like, yeah, they walk around, they might walk down to the store, and then they'll stand around in the court, and then they'll walk back to their house and sleep at night. Like, they do the bare basic functions required in order to have kind of like an open world group of AI NPCs that aren't just completely and totally static standing around. But you're not going to find, you know, there are little details in Elder Scrolls games where, like, if you steal something valuable from somebody's house, like when they're rocking around town, they'll talk about how their house was burglarized if you, like, listen closely. It's not really going to have anything like that from what I've seen so far. Kind of a very simple arrangement when it comes to the ways that the NPCs exist inside of the game world. However, inside those towns, you will find quests, and I have found that the quests occasionally have, like, little branching paths inside of them, most specifically the main quest. With the main quest, I definitely get the feeling that I am picking and choosing options based on gut feels rather than reals, because this is a grimdark version of Camelot. Everyone here is deeply flawed, from Galahad to Caradox to King Arthur to Merlin. Like, they're all modeled after real people behaving as they would behave if their realm was undergoing a ridiculous apocalypse that was reducing people to nasty, bloodthirsty zombies that beat you to death with their knuckles and elbows, you know? I'm gonna see if I can break his shield wall right there real fast because this is a really small, terrible area to fight. There we go, I got him. 420 XP for that guy. The game is squirrel hold with all kinds of stuff to do. As I said, it is... Is this gonna kill me? This game could sometimes have sort of like exaggerated fall damage, but like my acrobatics and whatnot are getting higher, so I'm guessing that I'm not going to die from that fall. But like back towards the beginning of the game, that fall right there probably would have took a fat chunk of my HP. One thing I think the game does exceptionally well, though, is the entire game seems designed around this sort of Nintendo idea. I don't know if you played Breath of the Wild. Who hasn't played Breath of the Wild by now? But if you watched interviews with the developer of a game like Breath of the Wild, they talk about how when you're designing worlds, you want to put lots of things up in the skyline to catch people's attention so that they think to themselves, I'm going to like wander over there. This is an absolutely gorgeous game when you've got it dialed up to max, and it runs reasonably well too. I tested the game on 2 different systems. This one right here that I'm currently playing on, I have a 4090, and it runs smooth as butter, Although you will find, I found that I had to turn off dynamic resolution with this game because it made everything look muddy and sort of like swooshy. But on my 4090 system, it's run flawlessly. There is fast travel in this game, and I tested it multiple times where I teleported from one side of a country to another side of the country. Completely seamless. No load screen for that. I don't know if it loads the entire game into your memory or the entire map into the memory of your system or how they did it. But teleporting around, instantaneous, no load screen. The only time you kind of get load screens in this game is when you go to interior locations or when you transition in between maps, and usually they're not that bad. I'm on a solid state drive with both of the PCs, and so haven't had any problems there. Performance has been absolutely fantastic. I have another system that I tested this game on for probably about 5 hours that I have a 3060, so nowhere near as good as a 4090. Like, much more of kind of like a mid-level graphics card for where we're at right now in terms of technology. And while there was some ghosting issues that I ran into, the game seemed to run perfectly fine for all the other stuff that I wanted to do, and it didn't look terrible while doing it. I'm hunting a bandit over here. That's why I decided to come over here, was to give you guys some like righteous combat against some bad guys. Oh, you summon, okay, you're a necromancer, huh? That's fun. I don't have any health potions right now. Hold on, let me put health potions on my bar. Yep, give me that health potion right there. And then, oh, you're calling down lightning again. I'm actually just gonna like evac for a minute because there's a lot of arrows hitting me right now. I need to not be in the direct line of fire for what it is that you're trying to do. Luckily, enemy projectiles can strike other enemies accidentally, so there is friendly fire for the NPCs in this game. How hard do you hit, by the way? Navera the Chillheart. Stop throwing knives and summoning zombies. God, you're making this... I'm trying to... uphold the law right now, Judge Dredd style, because you've been preying upon the people of this area for far too long, and you're making it difficult. There we go. We got her. She burned to death. Perfect. What do you have? You have anything good? You've got the... Oh, there's still archers around. Hold on. Let me deal with the rest of these bad guys over here. But in general, performance seems to be pretty streamlined and polished in this game. I was expecting for a game that looks pretty like this for it to run really, really poorly on my 3060 system. It's something that I've just become accustomed to. I can't play the really nice games on my other rig that I can on this one. But it actually ran perfectly fine. So if you've got a mid-level system, it might actually turn out to be okay. We got that person's head, and they also dropped a sword. What did they drop? The Frost Blade. So I need 10 strength in order to make this thing work, but it deals a portion of its damage as cold. And if you're dual wielding, apparently it has a sister blade, the Inferno Blade. If you have that, it deals almost double damage. Maybe not double damage. It's kind of hard to say. It's hard to say if it's dealing 10% more damage or if it's dealing an actual 110. Like an extra 100, is it additive or is it multiplicative? It's kind of hard to say right now. But either way, might be worth keeping an eye out for. I'm not a dual-wielding character, so either way, it won't be that useful to me. But maybe it'll be useful to somebody. We caught our second bandit right there while talking about game performance. I need to pick up some of these roses because there's going to be alchemy things and herbalist things all over the place. You are definitely 100% going to want to pick and gather everything you possibly can as you move through the game because, A, the developers had the foresight to make it all weightless. It doesn't really matter. You can carry around as many alchemy reagents as you want inside your equipment without it overweighing you and adding onto your encumbrance. But also from there, there's lots of useful things you can make. This is the kind of game where you can make a potion that makes you jump like 3 times as high. You can make a potion that will make you run at super speed. Lockpicking in this game, exact same lockpicking system as in every other title to ever exist with an open world RPG. I don't really have any other options for you. I'm sure somebody could come up with a lockpicking system that's a little bit different, but frankly, I feel like it's one of those things that people look for now in open world games, so like, why not leave it? $53 inside of there and some ambergris. You know what ambergris is? It's kind of gross. Ambergris is like the stomach fluid of a whale. They use it. It's actually a base for a lot of perfumes and stuff like that. Like really, if you paid a lot of money for a perfume, it probably had ambergris inside of it in defense of blood magic. Huh. Well, I mean, it taught me how to make better mana potions, and then we've got life transfusion. That actually sounds really, really good. What does life transfusion do? Is it just like an upgraded version of blood transfusion? Yeah, I definitely want that. Hold on, I need to find a testing dummy to use this on. You can be a blood mage in this game. You can also be a necromancer. There's all kinds of summons and things. I think I found 3 or 4 different summoning spells. Everything from skeletons to wolves to I think I found one that lets me summon some kind of gremlin thing. There's lots of spells in this game, but they don't actually crop up altogether that often. You do get lots of different spells. There we go. Drain this guy's... How close do I have to be? Like right there? Oh yeah, looky there. That's giving me all kinds of HP back. Watch out for this bear. These bears, yeah, that big attack that he does right there. I'd like to light this bear on fire, but if you're wondering why a bear died so quickly, I can assure you my weapon is super OP. I've spent a bunch of time crafting my weapon and using the modding interface. That's correct. Crafting system you might be scratching your head and wondering about. Yes, this game does have crafting systems, and in fact, they're quite good crafting systems that will allow you to customize and basically wear and equip whatever you want as long as you have the baseline stats. Man, these battle mages over here. Let's go for a little bit of health drain real quick. He'll probably die just of being health drained. These guys are blasting the hell out of me right now, though. And then I've also got this archer back here who's just like pelting the hell out of me. I gotta get him to swap. We'll put a bleed on him real quick so that he's taking even more damage. He's trying to drink a health potion, but that actually kind of works for me because I wanted to drain more of his life anyways. Good. I was wondering when I was going to get an upgraded life drain spell. I had like a level 1 life drain spell that I got like right at the beginning of the game when you first start out, and I had yet to find like a higher level one that felt better to me. Burning Ember, Burning Ember. I think I already have that. Yes, I have lots and lots and lots of Burning Ember spells, so I'm not really going to be utilizing that altogether that much. But now I've forgotten what I was talking about. Oh yeah, crafting systems. Let me take you back and show you the crafting system. As far as crafting systems are concerned, there's going to be two major crafting systems that you interact with, one of them much beefier than the other. So this right here is the grindstone table. Inside the grindstone table, you can create items. And the item creation system is actually kind of flexible. It's a little bit fluid by comparison to other games. You can craft an item here, and let's say that I wanted to make the Corpse Eater's Rag. I have a 50% chance to make garbage, and I have a 50% chance to actually make the product that I want to make. However, for every item in this game, you can add more objects, so you can basically overload on the objects that are required in order to make it, and that will give you a chance. So that actually guarantees that we'll get the armor right here. There's a chance that we'll get there's a 20% chance that we'll get junk, and there's a 25% chance that we'll get Corpse Eater's Rags upgraded by 1 level. So this is weak Corpse Eater's Rags. The next one would just be Corpse Eater's Rags. And were we to continue adding more stuff to this, I'm actually trying to find something. What do I have here? There we go. That'll work. So we've got it at Corpse Eater's Cap right now, but if I keep adding more objects, you'll see here that we start to have a chance to get a +2 Corpse Eater's Cap, which is just a way better version that gives you better stats and better bonuses. From there, once you've actually crafted and created your item from the things that you've been scavenging and hunting deer with lightning bolts and stuff like that, you can upgrade every single piece of equipment in the game. So for grindstones and various metals and leathers, you can add that +1 after the fact and increase the quality of said item. But wait, there's even more. From there, you can also attach relics to things. So you can pay money to add slots to each of these items, which gives you access to a Diablo-style system where you can put gems inside of here that do other things. There's armor gems, and there's also weapon gems. Usually there's some kind of elemental affinity or stat increase, but there are more interesting things in there you can do as well. And then finally, this one is the one that I actually think is the most consequential. Armor weight reduction. So for materials, you can lower the weight of any armor in the game so that it encumbers you less. This is absolutely fantastic news for anybody that likes to play Barbie dress-up like I do. I can't stand having a character that's wearing ugly nothingness. And so once I find something I like, I tend to rock it for a big chunk of the game. And between upgrading those items and also reducing the weight of those items, and we'll talk about why reducing the weight is important in just a second, you actually have a lot of control over what it is your character wears and can style out with in this game, so long as you have the stats to equip the item in the first place. Now, why is weight reduction such a big deal to me? Because this game has an interesting twist on encumbrance systems that other games do not have. So typically when you play an RPG, armor is divided up into light, medium, heavy, or they'll do something like leather, studded leather, chainmail, scale mail, plate, and you have skill inside of those. Inside those brackets. In this game, you also have skill inside those brackets, but what I like about this game is it doesn't matter what you equip. No piece of equipment in this game is sorted as heavy armor, medium armor, or light armor, but you do have a light armor, medium armor, and heavy armor skill. That's because they just give your character a meter that looks at your encumbrance and your strength, and every single thing that you equip increases this meter, and then wherever you are, that's the way that the skill levels up. So I'm in medium armor right now. Every single time I take a hit, I level up medium armor. And that's that, because my character is accustomed to being medium armored. And it doesn't matter, I can have a plate mail chest and everything else can be cloth. I can have plate mail that I've reduced the weight on so that I can get plate mail down to medium, so on and so forth. But the game does give you a lot of options to sort of get this to land where you want it to land so that you can wear the fit that makes you feel like you drip out the most. And I like that tremendously, actually. I think this is a really, really good idea that a lot of other RPGs should implement. Stop sorting your armor just by type and start just sorting it by the way that it affects your character when they wear it. And so this meter will go down whenever I level up my strength. Or if I really wanted to get my weight down, I could just start reducing the weight of all of my armor out here using the resources that I have for crafting. The other type of crafting that's inside the game right now, I've got to drop a bonfire for and then upgrade my bonfire. It's alchemy. And so you can cook and you can do alchemy. With alchemy, it's basically the same thing that you saw with armor. You've got the basic recipes over here, although alchemy has no chance to fail. You can add more stuff in order to give yourself a higher chance to create like a +1 or a +2 version of that item if you wanted to do so. So were I to go like that, you can see the greater health potion just sort of upgrading over there on the right as I push, although it won't really go any further. And there's also cooking, and these have their own skills that go along with them as well. You can see it up here. You level up in this game through flat XP. So you just have a meter that fills up, and every time it fills up, you level. And so it's not the system that Skyrim had, where every time you get 10 level ups of a minor skill, you get a major upgrade. This game functions differently from that. You just level up independently, and then all of your little passive skills, like one-handed blades, they level up on their own, and they just add a nice little dollop of extra benefit on top. And so the crafting system, I think, is actually where the game introduces a lot of its customizability. I was really proud. I spent a lot of money and a lot of time upgrading this sword right here to get it up to +3, and man, this thing has just been a head breaker. Inside every city, you're also furnished with a stash, because this game is completely and totally slathered and coated with named items. And if you're the kind of person that fastidiously collects everything on Earth because it has a name, and that means it must be important, so you can't bear to sell it, I really, really appreciate the fact that they gave you a Diablo-style stash that holds an infinite amount of items, and you can just throw stuff into it. But I guess in the interest of keeping this video somewhat brief, because I've recorded, so I've got a timer, and I've kind of lost track, but I've got like hours of footage at this point, because I don't actually that frequently cover open-world games because they're such a big undertaking when it comes to giving thoughts about it. So I'm going to summarize here. You guys can kind of just shout out the timestamp to the people who wanted less gameplay and more review before they make a purchase, and hopefully they can skip all that other stuff while I was wandering around beating guys to death. But I think Tainted Grail: The Fall of Avalon is a very ambitious game, especially when you consider that it's coming from a company who mostly makes really, really good board games, and they've only recently jumped into game development on the PC platform. Most developers, when they start out a development firm, they're like, all right, let's make a platformer. Let's make a card game, something simple that doesn't have a lot of fail points. And these guys stuck their chin out and just started swinging at an open world RPG, and that's got to be daunting technologically. And so anyways, I think that there's a lot to like here, and I think making an open world contiguous RPG with branching paths and storylines and outcomes might possibly be one of the nastiest types of games to make in sheer terms of coding. And so there was always a chance that this could have gone to hell really, really easily. I mean, the last 8 or 9 years are full of games that look great and open and then just completely sucked. And so when it comes to the things that I liked about Tainted Grail, the combat is smooth and fluid. It's simple, there's not a lot of complexity to it, but I have found that whether you're playing a mage, an archer, a thief, a warrior, your approach to fighting and combat does feel satisfying. The impacts on weapons feel good, sound effects are well selected, animations reflect that cast blasts and bashes have a proper amount of weight to them that is implied when the enemy staggers or whatever. The game's iframe dash felt nice to me and is balanced based around the player's gear weight as to how many of those dashes you can get consecutively, and I haven't found any real major problems with the iframes. They work well, and in fact they might be a little too generous, but it does make the combat feel very fast, very dashy, very slashy, and I've enjoyed fighting in melee while throwing spells everywhere. Itemization in this game is off the charts. There is a horde of named gear out there to find in the world, and opening those exact same items up for custom tailoring, upgrades, and modifications means that I felt attached to certain pieces of gear by the time I got done fully modding them out, and it kept me motivated to keep exploring to see what next cool thing would pop out of a chest or a bandit's butt. The skill trees, they felt meaningful. A lot of the upgrades in this game, I felt them after I slotted them in. That's good because some of you may have noticed that the entire skill tree is basically passives, and a big travail that a lot of games trip over with their passives is that if they're underwhelming, it makes the whole progression system feel pointless. And I think they've got it in a nice spot right now where if you drop 5 points into spell damage, you feel that extra spell damage for at least a couple hours after you slot it on in, and when you stop feeling it, it means it's probably time for an upgrade to your kit. I enjoyed the pace at which your character develops. If you're properly doing quests and exploring far-flung places, the game heaps XP on you, which means that if you're a few points short of that awesome chest piece you want to wear or that bow you want to wield, it won't be so long that you forget that item exists in your stash before those attributes are in place. The graphics are fantastic when it comes to the scene setting and overall atmosphere of the game. Environmentally, I think it may be one of my favorite games I've explored outside of Elden Ring. There's a lot of really interesting ideas that they've done with some of the dungeons and some of the locations and some of the cities that make the world feel unique and interesting and have sort of a Celtic bent to them. But the characters that inhabit the gorgeous world are stiff, poorly lip-synced, and generally don't do a whole lot outside the NPC routine of wandering around, sitting on something, eating an apple. There's not a whole lot here to make the world feel alive while you're traveling through populated areas. If you pick a guy's pocket, I didn't like see them react to it or whatever. Honestly, I didn't follow him home to see if he could get into his house or anything else like that, but like, in general, the NPCs are just NPCs. Beneath the ground inside of dungeons, the game takes on an almost Giger-style feel sometimes as you find elder ruins and things like that. That was a welcome change that I didn't expect from a medieval dungeon crawler, and actually I think it works fairly well. I didn't have any major performance issues or crashes, game-affecting bugs during my 20 hours, which is also an accomplishment for an open-world game. We all expect these kinds of problems to just exist inside whatever the next sandbox is, and yet the game seems to be pretty well polished at the moment when it comes to just performance, crashes, things working as you expect them to work. So far, I haven't really found major bugs. I found minor ones. On the bad side, I think mid-range hardware, I had a ton of ghosting and weird smearing that seems to be related to the game's dynamic resolution, but I still had certain scenes and whatnot where there was lots of ghosting and smearing to the textures and graphics that I've yet to suss out on that weaker computer. On my 4090 rig, everything looked pretty good once I just turned off the dynamic resolution. I think dialogue and conversation are pretty good in this game. The voice acting is considerably better than what you'd find in a lot of other games of the genre. There's a sort of like wry cynicism and sarcasm to the writing that I think actually fits the game's grimdark, post-apocalyptic world where there's no help. Like, it really makes sense that people are kind of cynical and nihilistic and sarcastic. The world is falling apart. The sky is literally falling and converting people into zombies every single night outside of the men here. And so I think other things that I noticed while playing through, there are occasional combat bugs. Like there's a guard in one of my cities that went into combat mode and raised his fists when I first arrived, and he's been shouting nonstop or something about thieves since I arrived. And he just walks around town and he does his normal routine while squared up. So he like goes to the store and he looks like he's about to beat the shopkeeper to death. When he goes home, he looks like he's about to fight his pillow. I've kind of written him off as an eccentric character in my personal playthrough, but it may annoy other people when stuff like that happens. NPCs in combat do occasionally get stuck on terrain and sort of shut down, and then they just stand there while you beat them to death. It's only happened 3 or 4 times in the 20 hours that I played, but it did happen enough that I started to notice it. The dungeons felt underutilized to me. There's not a lot of proper secrets. There's no, like, levers that open up a door on the other side of the facility. Illusionary walls. You know, there's no wooden things that you can set on fire that create a passage to an area that's been barricaded off or whatever. I like proper secrets in my dungeon, and in this game, most of the dungeons are kind of like a linear affair where you walk through them while fighting enemies, and, like, yeah, there will be things hidden underneath or like behind bookcases and stuff like that, but no actual proper Dungeons and Dragons style secrets. And so I would have liked to have seen a bit more like that as I played through the game. Enemies, they can seem damage soaky. Some enemies can be very, very damage soaky. You can mitigate that if you upgrade your weapons a lot and focus on crafting, and that's when I felt like the enemies started to have like a realistic time to kill. But before I did those upgrades, some battles were just long, drawn-out slugfests with enemies that had very, very inflated HP pools and kind of like a limited selection of abilities that they would fire back at you. But I think at the end of the day, this is quite a bit better than I would have expected from a company that only recently started making video games. They undertook an overwhelmingly complex project in their infancy as a game developer, and while it's not perfect, it's pretty damn solid. Like, it's a good open world game that'll keep you looking under every rock and bush for another magical item that you can slap onto your character and to advance the storyline, and so far that's been good enough to keep me hooked. worst case scenario is wait till it gets a discount if you're looking for something that's going to be like Grand Theft Auto quality. But honestly, I had a really great time with the game. I thought it was fun. My name is Splattercat. I sift through the pile to find what's worthwhile in the world of indie games every single day so you don't have to. Today up on the chopping block, we were fooling around with Tainted Grail, Fall of Avalon. Tomorrow we'll be playing around with something else. That's all I got for you. Goodbye, folks.